Howdy y'all, this here is the Christian Trucker, and this is my story, episode 17. Today we're going to talk about my trucking life, the journey that has been trucking for me. I started trucking when I was 16, maybe 15, not real sure. But I was working at a hardware store and they let me drive 1-ton trucks, and sometimes I'd get to drive the bigger ones, but most of the time it was always the 1-ton trucks. And let me tell you, we put some weight on them bad boys. Not long before I turned 21, I joined a company hauling acetylene and oxygen bottles. They actually paid for me to get my commercial Class B license with hazmat endorsement, because I would drive straight trucks for them hauling those bottles all over the place. Now that place is closed down. Well, the place is still there selling bottles, but a new company owns it. It was a pretty cool job. I mean, learning how to spin them bottles and roll them off by hand was always very interesting. I could probably still do it today. That's one of them skills like riding a bicycle, I believe. Now from there, I decided I wanted to drive a commercial truck, a big one. So I went to a driving school in Jackson, Mississippi, of which is now closed. It's a good thing too. You know, them people tried to charge me $13,000 for a 2-week course. It was ridiculous, man. And they were passing people that couldn't even back up in a straight line. So I took this course for 2 weeks in Jackson, and then I joined a company called Burlington Motor Carriers. That company also is dead and gone. I went with that company for less than a year. Well, I had first trainer. I had 2 trainers. My first trainer, he was a short, fat, grungy white dude. He had a used Freightliner cab over condo. It was green, and he liked, if there's kids around, you might want to take them from the room. He liked his lot lizards. And me being as young as I was and from the country, I didn't know nothing about no lot lizard. So this feller, he stops by the truck stop and he lets this old gal get up in the truck with us, and he claims that she's his friend. I didn't know no different. Well, I learned quickly. While I was driving, they was taking naps. Let's just leave it there. Well, we ended up going up through Washington and New York. Went up through a lot of hills. While we was in New York, he had a lady come over on him and hit him. Well, he pulled over and she kept going. She tore her car up on that front wheel. But when we got back to the shop, they canned him. They fired him. But you know, that dude, he could really drive. But apparently he had a few accidents. He taught me how to run them hills. We didn't have no Jake brake. He taught me how to run them hills without heating up my brakes. I learned a lot from him. I mean, he took me into places I really didn't want to go. There was carcasses of trucks on the side of the highway where they had wrecked, and they just hadn't come back and got them. They would burn up carcasses of trucks. I was like, man, where have you got me? He just laughed. He said, this is where we got to go to make our delivery. I'm like, Lord of mercy. Anyway, so they canned him, and I had to get a new trainer. And my new trainer was, I think, from Gulfport. He was a skinny white dude, a little bit older. And he liked to gamble. He liked to gamble so much it cost him his wife, his family, his home, everything he had. But you know, we went out to California, me and him did, and on the way out through Vegas and all through there, he had to stop at them casinos and blow that check. He just couldn't help himself. He just could not help himself. He whipped up in there and he went to gambling. But he didn't like to take showers. I had to threaten him in order to get a shower after the 3rd day. I ain't that guy. I've got to have a shower, man. And that dude, he didn't want to stop to get no shower. The only thing he wanted to stop was to stop and gamble. So finally, short of me whooping his butt, we stopped and got a shower. And from that point on, I never did really have much trouble out of him. He would stop periodically and let me get my showers. But I wasn't fitting to go sit in that truck with him for days and days and days on end. Well, I passed the training with him, and next thing Burlington Motor Carriers made us do was to get in a truck with another trainee for 2 weeks. So they put me in a truck. We had a cab over condo with a white dude. He had red hair, kind of chunky. We got in that truck, man, and we drove it for 2 weeks. We learned a lot in that 2 weeks, and we should have stayed friends a lot longer because we were pretty close during that 2 weeks. But you know, I wasn't big on the cell phones. This was a time period when we all still had pay phones in the truck stops to get our loads and all that mess. The good old days, I guess you could say. Well, like I say, I stayed with Burlington for about 6 or 8 months. It was less than a year. Then I came back home and I ran local jobs. For the most part, I stayed in a truck. I worked at some building supplies and all kind of stuff around, but I was always in trucks. Because when I was younger, I learned early in life that I wanted to be in something where I could control the atmosphere. I ain't gonna never be too hot and I ain't gonna never be too cold in my truck. Because I sure as heck ain't driving up in Alaska during the winter. And I sure as heck ain't driving out through the desert in the summer. It's just two things I ain't gonna do. It just ain't worth it to me to be doing that kind of stuff. Oh, sorry about my voice, y'all. I'm kind of trying to catch a little bit of a cold. Alright, so after Burlington, I ended up going to work with a company out of Decatur, Alabama called White Oak Transportation. I drove for them for a good long time. We hauled boxes and we hauled feed and we hauled all kinds of stuff. Now, their dispatch has a little bit left to be desired, but they're still a growing company. I think they even have a lease program over there. I don't know what it pays. I probably would never go back over there, even though I spent so long with them. It just is not my cup of tea no more. I am doing right now what I want to do. So, like I say, I worked with them, and it was a pretty local job. I mean, we would stay out sometimes, a couple times during the week, but for the most part, I was home every weekend, and I was home at night. And after that, I say I was probably there 10 years. I ended up going to a company called MCH Transportation out of Jackson, Mississippi. It's a company that has slowly been built up from nothing. They used to be called Mississippi Chicken Haulers. That's what the old MCH stands for, and they're still growing. They were the best company. I lost my mama and my brother with them, and they gave me all the time off I wanted, which I didn't take much. I just, to sit at home and dwell on something is not in my nature. But MCH was a really great company. I mean, it wasn't the best money, but they treat you like a name and not a number. If you need something, they work with you. If you need time off, they work with you. And as a family man, that was really good for me because I was on an account where we were hauling furniture and we would get paid by the stop. And you know, the stop pay is where I really seemed to make the best money. Because we would have multiple stops and each stop paid $20. Well, sometimes I'd have 5 or 6 stops a day. That adds up toward the end of the week. Well, another company came in and underpriced it and took our contract from us. And they started hauling all the furniture, and I got left down in the cold. I ended up having to leave that company. But before I went to MCH, I forgot to tell y'all, I hauled chickens. During Hurricane Katrina, I was actually hauling some biddies and putting them in a chicken house. The morning of Hurricane Katrina, barely made it back home before the trees started falling. But all them chickens we delivered, they all died because the chicken houses all lost power. So they had big losses in the chicken industry. But I tried doing that for a while, but after Katrina hit and all them chickens was dead, they kind of ground them up in the litter, and I got staph infection in my nose, and it spread down into my upper lip, and it almost killed me. And when I was at White Oak and we hauled feed, one of the guys that was in the feed plant, he was a maintenance guy, he was up under some of them machines and was working on one of them machines and cut his hand and ended up getting staph in his hand, and within a few days he was dead. So once I got rid of that staph infection in my nose, I got away from the chicken business. And while I was at White Oak, we hauled a little bit of reefer stuff. I would go up to Farmerville, pick up a load of chickens and bring it down to a Walmart. That was a pretty interesting haul, but for the most part, we hauled feed and boxes. I enjoyed the feed more than anything because that's where I made the best money. You know, we had loose leaf logbooks, and we had the freedom. All they would do is call us that evening and tell us where we had to go. That was the most stressful part, having to wait till about 3 or 4 o'clock before we got our load for the next day, not knowing if I could go out with my buddies or go fishing and still make it back in time to get the load, because a lot of times I'd have to leave out at 10, 11 o'clock at night in order to have my load there early the next morning over in South Texas. But that was the worst part of it, waiting on that load to come through so we could get it there on time. And then whenever we would get up at like 10, 11 o'clock, we'd run down there, see if the load was ready, and them guys down there at the plant wouldn't even have the load ready. That always hurts your feelings. Alright, so like I said, MCH, we hauled boxes and stuff. They actually, White Oak actually lost the box contract to MCH. And that's how I ended up going with MCH. Because they had got the contract where we were hauling, so a lot of the guys stayed. So I ended up going over there with them. At first I didn't go, but then I eventually saw the light and I went over and saw that they were a good company. Because everybody's got the conspiratorial theories whenever a new company comes in. Is it going to be good for us? Is it not going to be good for us? Blah, blah, blah. And it ended up being a great company, and I stayed with them for 5 years. Alright, and then after MCH, I went and tried KLLM. Well, see, what had happened is we were waiting on our tax check to come in. And our tax check hadn't come in, and our bills were getting behind. So I had to try something. Hold on just a second. I had to get me a drink of water. Alright, so we were waiting on this tax check, and it didn't come because whatever the reason was. So I needed to do something quick, and KLLM had this great big old sign-on bonus. So that's why I went ahead and jumped over there. Plus, I was wanting to try the owner-operator thing just to see if I liked it, because I had started watching the stuff about the Snyder IC program. So I went over and tried it, and I lasted 2 weeks. Went through their orientation. Then I went over and did a few loads with them. Got half of the sign-on bonus after my first dispatch. And plus the little bit of money that I ran the loads. I came out pretty good for 2 weeks. And it helped me catch up on my bills. So I went back to MCH for a short period of time until I could get my truck ready and everything at Snyder for the IC program. And that's where I was for 2 years. Well, 19 days short of 2 years. I really enjoyed the IC program. It taught me a lot. Now I'm over here at Advanced Trucking. And I'm hoping and praying that that was the last orientation that I'll have to go through in the trucking industry. Because I'm happy here. I plan on growing from here. So I appreciate y'all watching, and that's been my life in trucking up to the date. I appreciate y'all. God bless. Catch you on the next ride.